Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. So hello and welcome to another episode of It Starts With You. Delighted and excited, as always, with my guests. But here today I am joined by the wonderful Ben. Ben, why do you not rather than me introduce you like I get all of my guests to do, why don't you let the viewers and listeners know who it is, what you do, and why you're here?
Well, hello, Vic. Thank you for having me. First of all, and why am I here? Partly you asked, of course, and it's nice to have a conversation with you. Partly also, it's a nice opportunity to reflect, uh, and think about, well, what am I going to say here? And a lot of what I do is coaching, so I always grab those opportunities. But to introduce myself, and given our topic is behaviors and the disc lens, maybe a slightly longer introduction. Let's start. Lots of people know me as a rocket scientist, although it's 25 years since I graduated with an engineering degree and worked as a rocket scientist 25 years ago. So it's a world apart. Um, and the reason for mentioning it at the top of our conversation is, back then I'd have said I was very analytical, um, very considered, and I didn't know about DISC at the time, but I'd guess, I'd have been an S, or C, or somewhere in between the two, steady and conscientious. And I'd recognize that in myself from school as well. I was a shy kid, definitely down in the S's and C's. I didn't stay a rocket scientist very long. My timing was terrible, and I was in the wrong country. Had I been in America working for NASA, there'd be some really interesting stuff to do, and I'd still be doing it. Yeah, and that world is so exciting today. But 25 years ago, in the UK, there weren't the same exciting projects to work on, and what I was working on moved at a glacial pace. So I pivoted, and I joined a recently started consulting company, and I remember simply thinking to myself, I need something faster paced. I need something sort of more immediate, and a young consulting company where I would be working on client side for major customers. I just knew it would give me those things. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because pace, more of a people focus coming through. There's the D and the I, which is where my profile is today. It's really interesting. So that's the first little story by way of introduction. The next is, I spent 19 years in growth companies, and what was sort of pointed out to me really early on was that, in fact, my boss at the time, he said, "Ben, you seem fearless." So what do you mean? He said, "We seem fearless. You just take on the challenges that nobody else will, the ones that everyone else here walks away from. You put your hand up. You seem fearless." Yeah, and so I was quite successful quite quickly because I took on these, I bit off these problems and solved them, and and so I progressed well. But again, there was a real sort of task focus to that, and I was quick to say yes. So sort of the D bit was there. Um, and along the way, I started a consulting team in London. We had quick success, really quick success. Um, and and that grew and became much bigger. And that team, that company was, I was in the MD role, managing director role. That team, that company was twice acquired. Yeah, and this
Wow.
begins to bring me on to what I'm doing today. We were twice acquired, and what I expected was this would be really disruptive. Um, I would, growth would be stopped. Um, I'd likely lose one or two people. Maybe I'd lose a customer, key customer in there. It would take a while for us to get our arms back around it and begin moving forward again. And both times, it's not what happened. Both times, the opposite.
Wow.
The entire team stayed intact, and we immediately had our best quarter uh, by any metric you could pick. Engagement was up, wins were up, the work we won was better, it was more strategic, longer term, interesting stuff. For our client projects, we would achieve firsts, we'd hire someone aspirational, best quarters ever, both times. And and initially this was great. I had new shareholders and they were saying, Ben, this is better than you told us it was going to be. Yeah, superb. Then it was a puzzle as I realized I couldn't explain what had happened. It was opposite to what I expected. I couldn't explain it. And then it became an inconvenient truth and a problem. As I realized, I had a good team, and they've been good. They've been performing at a good level. We'd solved the problems. We'd grown the company. Lots of success there. But twice over, they'd shown me they were capable of a level of impact, double, triple where they'd been. And then the penny dropped as the leader of that business, as managing director, and sort of founder of that part. I created conditions for them to deliver good, and that had been good. Um, but I hadn't created conditions for them to deliver great, and they were capable of it. And we'd have created a completely different future for that business, for all of those people, had I done that. So that was my great escape. I left. I went back to school, um, a degree in applied psychology, particularly looking at groups and teams, until I could explain what had happened, why had they, and how had they come together so powerfully. This is 8 years ago now, and then I started my current business, which is a B Corp. Uh, called Leader and Team, and I work with founders and CEOs and their teams so that we can see that same good to great transition in the top team of the company and the change stories of those businesses. And about half of what I do is one-to-one with the founders, managing directors, CEOs, and the other half is working with those teams through a discipline that I call Forge. And that's me. And my profile, uh, as I mentioned along the way, is a DI. It works really nicely for that. I've got a bit of pace to me. I'm not a really extreme or strong DI, sort of moderate, but I've got a bit of pace to me. But I've got a nice balance between task focus. What does that team need to achieve? What could it achieve? What does the future hold? But I've also got the people, the inclusive focus as well. How's the team operating? Because the only way we're going to get to that fantastic future, catch up with that fantastic future, is by that team, you know, becoming, a real team, then better than a high performing team. Beyond that, transformational in its impact and best in class. So, that DI profile, balancing task and people focus with a bit of pace. Um, it sort of fits the role.
Mm. Well, that's interesting that you say that you were a more reserved S and C style. Because when I first met you, if I obviously that I do, I mean, we've both through the profiling tool of DISC. So if we talk in terms of the DISC letters, And if I first met you, I would have had you as the more reserved character. And maybe that is from your past that you are like that, but maybe in business, because we don't fundamentally change who we are, especially if we have a strong particular style, like me as an extreme yellow. But actually, our environment impacts how we behave. So when you're in a working environment, your red and your yellow are there, but not, like you say, to the extreme level, so that you actually are closer to the S and the C, that if you need to call on that, you can flex and adapt probably a lot easier than someone like me. Would you say that was?
I mean, this for me is the really interesting part of DISC, the question of flexibility, the question of range. Yeah, and first time I was profiled, got my profile, and it was a DI. I was surprised, and I hadn't thought this through. So in my head, I was expecting, S or C. So I was surprised. And what came next was, but okay, well that means I've got some flexibility. Then that's handy, isn't it? Yeah, and a bit of range. And as I thought about it, I realized, well, being DI faster, faster paced, a balance between task and people focus doesn't mean actually that I've stopped being analytical or considered, and I thought, you know, and that's because, I could see what I was doing. I'd actively worked on critical thinking, reflection in the moment, fast and slow decisions, and a way to move forward is small experiments. Let's find out what we learn about a thing by trying this or that, and then we'll go again,
Mm.
and we work our way through the solution in real time. So it was sort of a way to be much more analytical and considered in real time. And I realized, so I've got both. And if you had a little if you had me followed by a little drone, what you'd notice is that I often take time before meeting one of my founders, CEOs, or one of their teams. I often use the time before that meeting, to think back, to think forward, just to spend some time in their space. So I always invest that time. I spent quite a bit of time ahead of this conversation, Vic. That's one of the ways that I'm still pretty C, but ready to be sort of D when I get to a conversation like this. So I was surprised. I kind of realized, okay, but flexibility, and then I realized, I've got real range, and whenever I talk about somebody's disc profile with them. Um, I quite quickly skip through their profile. They recognize it, and that's great. And then it's got credibility, hasn't it? Because they think, yeah, that's me. Um, I'm really interested in the edge, by the way, because so you'll know this. Someone will read through their profile and they'll get to say, yeah, that's me, that as well, that's me to a T. And then they'll say, but not this bit. And they'll put a line through just one sentence or maybe two sentences, and I find that super interesting. And of course, DISC is about behavioral preferences. What's more powerful than behaviors is our values and our beliefs.
Mm.
Yeah, and with a little bit of probing, what I normally find is that edge of the profile, those bits that don't match, a little bit of probing, we find out that those are circumstances where their values come into play. And what was suggested in the profile is counter to their values. It's a value transgression. Yeah. And so they react strongly to that and they react differently. And that's good awareness as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So I like that about the profile. It gives us awareness straight away. But then where I want to go next is, that flexibility. And a nice way to do that, I think, is, you know, I teach people to quickly read the disc profile of the person in front of them. And it's
Mm.
dead easy, isn't it? You meet somebody, has this person got the same pace as me, or they're a bit faster, or they're a bit more considered? Has this person got sort of the same focus as me, or are they more task? Are they more person oriented? Just calibrate those differences and then try to meet them in the middle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's never about changing who we are. It's about when you're with someone who's similar, we both know you just get on, you don't really need to flex and adapt. It's that whole adaptation, but just coming back to what you said about values there,
Mm.
because we can read profiles, and when you get to do it as we do, just it just becomes second nature, doesn't it? But how do you read the values of someone?
I don't think you can read the values, but you can ask them about their values. You can help them to notice their values. And the we can ask somebody, when you've spotted that bit of your profile where you don't behave that way. Um, tell me about a situation like that, and then we can take it a little bit further. So tell me about situations where somebody's pressed a hot button, and you don't only behave differently, you behave strongly and quickly differently. Then they've got to rise out
Yeah.
of you. Tell me about that situation. Yeah, and then behind that, we can often hear one of their deep core, vitally important values that was transgressed
Mm.
in whatever example they're talking about, and it brings that value into view, into awareness. And these are so deep seated that you know um well, like, I've grown up to 49 years of age, and still occasionally discovering one that have been running quietly in the background, and and it's good to see them.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you say are your top two, three values?
Um, so one we've heard about as we've gone along this morning is, I people are important to me. When I talked about that, the company that was twice acquired, what I actually talked about was the team.
Hmm.
And when I reflected on um, that time and what was important and what I was most proud of and what I would have wanted to do differently, it was all about the team. So, people, definitely a vitally important value for me. I think that played out, in that early career pivot. I've been academic at school,
Hmm.
two maths teachers as parents, off to university, an engineering degree, aeronautical engineering, and some of the most obscure and complex maths that you can imagine, and that I have been very glad to forget. Um, and into a role, and it wasn't fast enough, but also there weren't enough people around me day to day as I did that
Yes, I
that
was gonna
work.
say if you say black and white on a piece of paper and you did like two parents, both maths teachers, went to school, engineering, rocket scientists, that kind of stuff. If you had to give that to anybody who knows any profiling tool, you would definitely be in that C, that blue, that analytical character. But you didn't stay there because actually that's not where you thrive. So being the whole people side of things, what does that actually give you as a human? Being around people and seeing people succeed.
Well, before I answer that directly, another one of my values is to do with possibility. One of my favorite questions is what's possible. So what's possible now? Um, and um, it wasn't disc, it was Clifton's strength. So there's a lovely little phrase in my Clifton strengths profile, which described how I like the present to catch up with the future.
Hmm.
And in combination with people, I love um, being able to get a sense of what somebody has in their future, sees for their future, the possibility what it could be. Um, it lights me up. Really, I'm interested in it. I'm curious about it. I'm enthusiastic. I just want to get there. I know, as soon as I know that, um, I want their present to catch up with that future that they're excited about.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what does it give me? You know, no, it gives me everything. I think one way to answer that is, leader and team, which I've been doing now for 7, 8 years. It's true what they say: do what you love, and you'll never work a day again. And I haven't, and I never look back.
Mm.
I enjoy each day. I look forward to it. Who am I going to meet today? Wonder
Yeah.
what's been going on for them. Um, I wonder what's coming next. Let's get involved. It's a joy.
It, well, it's a bit of a drug as well, isn't it? Because it's
Oh, sure.
it's always been for me. I've loved, so I always say to my clients, if we're doing a just a disc workshop without anything else, and I say this is just stripping back all of those other aspects that have impacted your life. So, it starts off with, stakes your values, your emotional intelligence, everything. It's just your basic wiring, and then let's build up all of those other layers is what makes us human, isn't it? And it's seeing those light bulb moments when, especially like a group of people that all work together. So I've got one client where I take on all of their new recruits, but quite often I get refreshers because they just like it because it's part of their
Sure.
culture now, which is I'm all about don't just do a workshop and I'm out the door. Build it as part of your culture. And it's that light bulb like, oh, now I get you, Ben. Now I know why I really frustrate you because I just don't give you enough detail.
Mhm.
And now I know why you really frustrate me because you just
Yeah, and then
overloading me with stuff and I just don't want it.
sure, and then what else? And this is what I love about using Disc as a tool. It's a starting point for that, isn't it? So as I said,
Yeah.
I teach people, you know, you know, think of the people you've met today. Tell me what their profile is, and that just that little calibration. What's their pace compared to yours? What's their focus compared to yours? So where might they be on the profile? How do you meet them halfway? Can you adjust your pace halfway towards theirs? Can you adjust your focus halfway towards theirs? And they naturally do the same in the opposite direction. This is how rapport works. Yeah, and then exactly as you say, it's more human. I get you now and we're communicating better. But do you know what? Once we've noticed that about a person, we start noticing and learning so many other things about them. Yeah, so in a team, I do a lot of work with teams, and if we start with DISC, it's super useful. Yeah, but and the team then plays people a little bit better to their individual strengths and the combined strengths. And I think, wow, that was great. That worked. We've had
Yeah.
a much better month because of it. And then they instantly ask, all right, what else can we learn about each other? Yeah, and if they start having a conversation about, in our team here, Vic, we're in a team, and hey, Vic, just talk to me for 10 minutes. Yeah, how and when do you make your best contribution? Yeah, and what gets in the way of that? What a fantastic conversation, and it goes so far. Um, you know, I think quite often about neurodiversity in teams. If we take one of the stats that the prevalence of neurodiverse profiles is 15 to 20%. That means in a team of 7 people, there is an 80% likelihood that we have a neurodiverse person in the team.
Yeah.
And in all likelihood, we've got two or three. So if we're having that same conversation, maybe the team did some good work with DISC and they've got that appetite. And so now they're having that conversation. Hey Vic, tell me, when do you produce your best? What's your best contribution? How does that happen? How does that flow? What gets in the way of that? And you answer or I answer, then whether somebody is neurotypical, neurodiverse, they are explaining what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is so powerful. And that's one of the things that helps a team shift from good to great.
Mm. It's it's also by getting teams or getting the leaders of the teams to understand that actually by pressing that pause button and letting the team come away together for whatever it is, a day, a couple of days, to really work on themselves. Because people go, oh, I haven't got time to have all the team out for the day. I'm like, no, no, but do you not realize the impact it will make long term by taking that day out? You're not losing a day's productivity. You're going to gain more because the team now understand each other, so can work better together and go, like you said, from good to great.
Absolutely, and and I said I work with teams, and I use a discipline I called it called Forge, and Forge is just 1 day per quarter. So it's not a big investment for that team, just 1 day per quarter, and it's super powerful though because what we focus on is the core learning of that team. You
Mm,
know, there's three dimensions to impacting a team. There's the collective challenge of the team. There's sort of the know-how and the approach of the team, and then there's the cohesiveness, the communication really of the team inside and outside the team.
mm,
There's these three things. Um, but what makes a team good and then great and then best in class is their core learning
mm,
coming together and learning, looking back at the last 3 months, if we've done it quarterly, what did we intend? What actually happened? Why did it happen that way? No, really, why did it happen that day? How did we operate as a team? And how did that produce the outcome that we got, good and bad and in between. So what are we going to learn about ourselves?
mm,
And how do we improve our approach going forward? It's a simple core learning conversation, but incredibly powerful.
mm.
And if we do that quarterly in a team and wrap a couple of things around it, my goodness, we get change and we write a different future for those teams.
And it's definitely picking up what you've said there about doing it quarterly, or if it's not quarterly, if it's 6 monthly, but doing it consistently and making change part of the culture of the business. Because I always say, people, you go into companies and they've got their values on the thing. I'm like, that does not drive your company culture. Your behavior does. Because you go into so many places and it's like, yeah, but your behavior is not congruent to the values that are on your wall because I've just seen the way that they have spoken to them, and that's not respectful like you've got on the wall. So
Mhm.
it's about and it's it's not always about coming away from the office, but it's about coming away from your desk. Leave your phones and leave your laptops out of the room and really immerse yourself in this work because it's so powerful.
Isn't it?
But it's do I mean, I said I think it's when I say like my message for my TEDx is basic, and you said no, it's profound, and that's the thing. It's profound, but basic human needs of being understood
Mhm.
and being valued, and we just don't give people time. I don't feel.
I completely agree. Completely agree. How about you? How about you, Vic? How do you introduce disc in a way that um, stops people from putting themselves in a box?
Oh, well, I always say to people, this is not an excuse for bad behaviour.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't- yeah, you get it. You get people say, let's choose red because that's my brand colour. Yeah,
Hmm.
well, that's just who I am. I'm just red. I'm just disc. I'm just D. I'm dominant. I'm demanding. It's just like, that's not an excuse. You
Yeah,
need,
yeah. And sometimes you hear overhear people saying, stop being so blue.
yeah,
Don't be so blue. Yeah, and it's almost an angry
yeah,
tone to it, doesn't it? I
yeah.
totally agree. So yeah, I like that. It's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse for bad behavior. This is about recognizing, understanding, and respecting that we're all different and we can flex and we can adapt. And the best journey you'll make is to meet someone halfway. Don't try and be blue. And blues don't try and be yellow, and vice versa. We're a blend of all of them. Let's face it, we're not just one colour.
Yep.
But it's just about stop, pause, respect that that person is different. And then also look at actually how powerful it would be if you work with someone who is the polar opposite to you. How much more would you achieve if you both work together, as opposed to me working with another yellow would be great, but we'd probably make loads of mistakes along the way.
Mm,
And I just find it's powerful. When you stop, you pause. It's powerful.
isn't it? And you said there we're all a combination of all four of the disc colors. Our range. Yeah, it's much bigger than any one of the disc quadrants. All of us have got a range that extends into pretty much all four quadrants. We might not be able to be completely opposite,
No,
but actually our range covers a good two-thirds. By the time that you know, we're uh, we're grown up and we've got a few years of experience in the workplace and in other settings, our range is really good. So it's almost, I think, um, unhelpful for us to think of ourselves as a DI. I had to remind myself of the profile. I picture, well, actually, I can do most of this, and what's important is that I figure out where I notice, I pay attention, I notice where the person in front of me is,
yeah,
and I meet them halfway,
yeah,
and they'll meet me halfway.
yeah,
Yeah, and then we're in rapport, and then we're in communication, and and then stuff can happen.
yeah.
Good stuff.
It's knowing. So my blue is on the floor, absolutely on the floor. But that doesn't mean that I can't do detail. It's just that when I have to be really focused and it's quite exhausting for me. Like,
Yeah,
but if I'm writing an email or I'm writing a proposal, trust me, I am reading, I am rereading, I am doing all of that before I send it out because I never used to. And I used to think, oh, how many bits of business did I lose just because there were spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, misalignments? Because if somebody I was sending it to was very analytical, they'd have dismissed me because I made mistakes in the proposal. And that's
yeah.
simple things like that that actually, again, if we stop, if we pause, if we slow down, we can do everything with everyone, but you just have to work on it.
Yeah, and isn't that sort of a telling reflection, actually? And I've got the same. I also work independently. I've worked alone a lot, and it's tough because we work within our own preferences then, and we have exactly the sort of struggles that you mentioned. But yeah, you're a strong DI or ID, I would guess. Um, yeah, so you may not, as you've just said, you struggle to go all the way into blue,
Hmm.
but you can, I'm guessing you can certainly go far enough in that direction that somebody with a moderate or strong blue profile, can meet you and you can be super productive together.
Can.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Um, we could continue talking because we are both very passionate about this subject. Um, Thank you for sharing all of that wisdom. And, hopefully people are listening to these thinking, oh, I know what I am, but how do I work with someone who's the opposite? So what would you say, have you got any like last words of wisdom that you would leave for the listeners in terms of understanding who they are?
In terms of understanding who they are, I think it's a really good way to understand who we are is to notice ourselves against others. So just that little piece, we stick with disc for this conversation about just noticing the other person, just a little bit of allowing a little bit of time at the beginning of a conversation. Where are they today? Is their pace a little bit faster, a little bit slower? Are they task focused? Are they people focused? Can I move a little bit towards them so that they can move towards me? You notice just as much about yourself in that little reflection in the moment as you notice about them, and but meeting them that way is just incredibly important. So that's that. Yeah, that's just that piece around that moment of meeting and noticing the other is where I'd like leave it.
And if we start doing that, it just becomes a habit.
Yes.
Wonderful. Ben, I will make sure that all of your show notes include all of your contacts and social media. So if you want to reach out to Ben, please feel free to do so. But thank you for joining me on this episode of It Starts With You.
Thank you, Vic. A really nice conversation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.